All right, this will be the most actionable guide to cold emailing on the internet for anyone who works in B2B tech or SaaS sales, where booking meetings over email is a crucial part to your success. My name is Connor Murray. I've worked in enterprise software sales for over 6 years, where I started as an SDR, worked my way up to the enterprise account executive role, and literally sent tens of thousands of emails in that time span and really honed down on what works. Not only that, I spent 2 years in the middle as an SDR manager, overseeing dozens of reps and testing out different email strategies at scale. So I have seen what techniques work and not only had exceptional results myself with these techniques, but coaching it to hundreds of reps over the years. And I think a lot of what's taught out there is actually very misleading, detrimental to your results, and just leads to you wasting a bunch of time trying techniques and tactics that don't work. So in this video, we're going to cover why email prospecting is so powerful. I don't think people understand just how powerful it is. We're going to talk about how to get prospects to actually respond to your emails. You can't book a meeting unless they actually respond to you. Then we're going to dive into actual email templates, okay? So we're going to go over good ones and we're going to go over bad ones. We're going to look at the most common ones I see out there. Probably about 90% of what I see falls into this bad category. We're going to break down why it's bad and how to turn it into a stronger, more effective template. We're going to cover follow-ups, which are arguably more important than the initial email itself. Most importantly, arguably, we're going to talk about the A-B cadence that you should be putting in place to maximize your results, to maximize your efficiency, so you know what you're doing every day. And it turns the job almost into a game because it's all on autopilot with this strategy. Then we're going to talk about the concept of an email objection handling bank. I don't think enough people talk about this or put that technique into practice. And then we'll finish off touching on subject lines because that's a question I get a lot. So let's get into it. All right, so first, why is email prospecting so powerful? In my opinion, when you're starting out as an SDR and you're looking to get results on the board quickly, you have two techniques usually. You have cold emails and cold calls. While I love cold calls and I think that's the highest quality interaction, the quickest path to results and to start booking your first meetings is often through email. So why is email so effective? One, it's scalable. You can send out a lot more emails than you can make cold calls if you're doing them and structuring them the right way, which we're going to talk about. And because you're sending out so many, slight improvements can make massive differences in your results. And I'm going to show you just how massive in a second. And like I said, while cold call is the highest value interaction, in my opinion, like they lead to the highest quality conversations, the show rates are higher, those calls tend to convert to opportunities more often that are booked over cold calls. More meetings can be booked through email with a proper process in place. The other thing I like about email is that you can control your tone and style. So tone and style, is over 90% of your success on cold calls. And I talk about the assumptive downward inflecting tone all the time, but it's still hard for a lot of people to implement. It's uncomfortable and it takes practice. When you're sending emails, you're just typing things out. So even if you're not a confident person on the phone, you can sound very confident over email. You can carefully craft responses too, rather than having to respond to prospects on the fly. So these are the biggest impediments that I see to success over email, especially new SDRs, is one, people asking around, taking the first template they find and then running with it. You're about to put in all this work, hours of work every single day, making lists, creating sequences, following up. You don't want to just cheap out on the messaging. You want to make sure that the messaging you have in place is going to maximize all this effort that you're about to put in. So don't just take the first template, and hopefully this video can serve as a guide for what types of templates to use. Next, this is similar to what you hear in my cold call videos too. Passive optional sounding language. I'm going to show you examples of this and the most common ones I see. And then third, ineffective follow-ups. The follow-ups are arguably the most important part. Most people don't respond to the initial email itself. It's the follow-up that directs their attention down to your initial email, and then they read it a lot more closely. So we're going to cover what follow-ups to use as well. So here's what I mean when I say small improvements can equal massive results when it comes to email. And this is why it's so scalable. So I know this looks like a lot. I'll break it down for simplicity, but here's an example of 3 SDRs where we look at how many emails they sent, the response rate to those emails, the percent when those people respond that they convert to actual meetings on the calendar, and then when those meetings are held, what percent of them convert to ops, and then the expected pipeline out of that. In this example, I just used $100,000 as the average size of an opportunity. But look at the difference between 3 SDRs. Notice what I didn't change. They all sent 1,000 emails, we'll call it, in a week. But look at how small improvements in some of these key inputs can dramatically improve the expected outcome, the expected pipeline outcome. So in this example, this person has a 3% response rate. They book about 1 out of 6 people who respond, and then about 1 out of 3 of those meetings turn to opportunities. Look at the increase in expected pipeline when you can just go from 3% to 4% response rate. That's 30 responses as opposed to 40 responses. Now, what if we can go from 1 out of 6 people taking the meeting to 1 out of 5? These are very, very doable and slight improvements. And then instead of 1 out of 3 meetings converting to an op, 1 out of a little bit more than 1 out of 3. You over double your expected pipeline, and you can do a lot better than these improvements, but these are meant to just show how slight improvements at scale equal massive results. So look at the difference between a 3% response rate to 5, 15% conversion rate to 25%, 1 out of 6 to 1 out of 4. The expected pipeline goes up a lot. And this is repeatable. So this is every week or every month. This is how these SDRs that you see getting results that almost don't make sense, this is what they're taking advantage of. They're identifying the key inputs, whether they realize it or not, and doing what they can to just marginally improve all of them. And when you're able to improve multiple of them at once, that's where the results start to get silly. What I didn't even do here is, what if you could structure your day so that instead of being able to send out 1,000 emails a week or 1,000 emails every 2 weeks, it's 1,500. All of these results would increase by 15% here. This would increase by about 206,000 or so. That's how powerful these key inputs are and why email can be so effective at scale. So even more so, what is the key input to booking email meetings? Maybe pause the video, take a second. I don't think enough people think about this. They just think about booking meetings and sending out. They think more quantity will lead to more meetings. Not necessarily. The key input is responses. You can't book a meeting over email unless they respond to you. Whether that's good and they initially take the meeting, or if it's bad, you need to elicit that bad response or that objection for you to even have a chance at booking the meeting. So what you'll see in these templates I'll show you soon is that your language should seek to induce a response, and there's ways to do that. More responses gives you more chances to book meetings. You need people to engage with your message. And like I talk about with cold calling, a response is a shot on net. It gets you on the playing field, and now you have a non-zero probability of booking the meeting. Even if the response is take me off your list, like never contact me again, take me off your list. That's a lot better than just not getting responded to. So my email messaging is designed to elicit responses, and I just think it's funny when I start teaching it to people. Oftentimes, they might not book the meetings right out of the gate, but they come to me and say, I'm getting tons of responses, and they're all bad. I look at them and they're like, take me off your list, never contact me again. But the SDR has a smile on their face because they subconsciously understand that getting the responses gives them chances at booking the meetings. There's nothing worse than spending hours sending out emails and just not getting responded to. It makes you feel like, what am I even doing here? Am I just completely wasting my time? So you'll never convert the majority of responses to meetings or even close to that. But again, just like that last slide I showed you, if you can go from a 5% success rate to a 10% success rate in terms of converting those responses to meetings, you just doubled the amount of meetings you were booking. So don't think in terms of binary outcomes, whether you booked the meeting or not. More responses means you're on the right path, and it's eventually going to start leading to meetings. So you need to just be looking to improve your odds by even the slightest margin and get shots on net. And I put here the Steph Curry analogy. I always like to use sports analogies. I just think they're easy. It's almost like if you were the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry in his prime, you're Steve Kerr setting up the game strategy. You're down 20 points because Steph Curry keeps getting open shots and missing 3-pointers. Do you think Steve Kerr, the head coach, is sitting there thinking, man, we just came up with a bad strategy, like we came unprepared. No, he's like, we're getting stuff as open shots. We're getting the probabilities, like the good probabilities we want. They're just not converting yet. So over time, the variance will ride out and start leading to better results. It's the same thing in email. You first have to start giving yourself shots on nets by getting these responses and then learning how to more effectively convert them to meetings. So how do we get prospects to respond? You'll see this term I use if you're familiar with my videos, value statements. I think of emails very similarly in the tone that you go for in the email. I always talk about the assumptive tone in email. I call it assumptive alignment. Your email should almost read that you're assuming this meeting is going to happen, and merely which day, like what day is the meeting is going to happen is your question here. It's not if they're open to it or are they possibly free. Those are examples of passive language, which I'll get into in a second. So there's 3 questions you need to answer in every email. First, you have to tell them who you are. Second, tell them why you are important and relevant to them, which can be what priorities and challenges you solve and how do you solve them. And then state, this is the key word, state, don't ask, that you're looking to get aligned going forward or you're looking to set a meeting. Don't ask if they're free or if they have time. State that you're expecting this to happen. This is what makes the template assumptive. Other factors to getting to people to respond and just effective emails in general. Less is often more. Reduce fluff wherever possible. Every word and every sentence should have a purpose and be increasing the probability of success of your email. So take out filler lines. Like an example, one that people lead off with is, I hope all is well, or I hope this email reaches you, or something like that. No one is taking a meeting. That's not increasing the probability of any meetings. And if anything, even if it's just a 1% chance, someone could read that first line and just be like, oh, another prospecting email. No thanks. Another key is sound like a human. Don't sound like you wrote this using marketing language from your company. Again, I'll show you examples of this in a second. Sound like you're an actual human being personally reaching out to them because you want to set up time with them. And then, yes, most importantly, you need to use strong assumptive language. The message should imply that a meeting will be taking place rather than asking if they have time. So here's an example of a common template I see being used. And what I did here, this is how my brain works. I almost scan for passive language or things that are reducing your odds of success on the email. And I put some here in red. So here's the template that I see. I hope this message finds you well. I'm part of the ABC team that supports all things pertaining to sales, service, marketing, and overall customer experience. We work with many organizations on process transformation, and I wanted to reach out to hopefully set up a time to see how we can potentially act as a resource moving forward. I would love to set up time next week for a brief 15-minute call to introduce myself and get a better understanding of your current applications and how we can be of assistance to you and your team. Warmest regards, Connor. All right, so it's not all bad. It is short, it's concise, it's to the point. It's not the worst template I've seen out there, but I've highlighted all the areas that just stick out to me where if I was a person receiving this email, I would just ignore it. So first, I hope this message finds you well. You sound like a lot of salespeople when you say that. I don't think this increases the effectiveness of your email at all. You only get a few seconds sometimes. People scan these emails, and that's just a wasted line, in my opinion. I think you can just take that out. Here's other examples, passive language. We work with many organizations on process transformation, and I wanted to reach out to hopefully set up a time. Doesn't sound assumptive, doesn't sound like you're expecting this to happen. It sounds optional, to potentially act as a resource. So that's kind of weak language. People generally don't need a resource. They generally have enough resources. They have enough people reaching out to them to be a resource. You're not standing out from the crowd here. I would love to, it'd be nice to, I would love to, but we don't have to set up some time next week for a brief 15-minute call to introduce myself and get a better understanding. You should have an understanding. No one wants to help you get a better understanding of their role or their current applications and how we can be of assistance. Again, that's kind of weak to you and your team. Warmest regards, not even my favorite subject line. I'll show you what one I like it better. Connor. You might be thinking, really, Connor, the subject line, you think that's going to be a big deal? The reason it's a big deal is because of what I was showing you earlier about how the smallest, slightest improvements in response rates can lead to dramatically better results over email. So yes, I pick apart even the smallest details because any one of these on its own isn't going to be that big of a difference. But together, yes, these are the types of things you can improve to go from a 5% response rate to an 8% response rate, which is a 60% increase in results in your response rate and probably a 60% increase in the amount of meetings you book. So now I'm going to show the same template, but make it more this assumptive alignment style. Now, this isn't even the template I would recommend fully. I think it's better. I try to just keep the same general format here and how you can keep it basically the same, but make it a little more assumptive. So here, I'm a little more concise. My name's Connor Murray. I'm part of the ABC marketing automation team responsible for supporting XYZ company. Our team has been working with companies like XYZ on priorities related to sophisticated campaign design, advanced lead scoring, and unlocking real-time account insights. I am looking to set up 15 to 20 minutes next week in order to introduce myself and get aligned with any of your priorities in these areas going forward. Do either of the following dates work? Blank, blank. Please let me know when works best and I will send us the invite. Thanks in advance, Connor, in this case. So same overall structure as the first template, but I put in green some of the areas. So just as a start too, I didn't put the whole paragraph in green, but I was a little more specific rather than saying sales, service, marketing, and overall customer experience. That's like pretty broad and not going to be that relevant to any person. I named some specific priorities that might be more relevant to the specific persona that I'm reaching out to. And then we get down here, I would love to set up some time, replaced with I'm looking to set. Such a small change, but these are the types of things that increase response rate. This sounds assumptive. It sounds like the meeting is implied and you're merely asking if either of these days work. And get aligned with any of your priorities in these areas going forward. That's a little better in my opinion than get a better understanding of your role and see how we can be of assistance. This isn't mandatory, but sometimes I just like to give them a couple options. I think it makes it easier. Please let me know when works best. So again, I'm stating let me know when works best, not are you interested or are you open to it? And I will send the invite. Thanks in advance, Connor. So thanks in advance, I'm pretty sure is statistically shown to be the best subject line. There's a few options that I like, but I like stuff like this a lot better than warmest regards. So here are some other examples. Just be aware of these. I won't go through them in as much detail, but again, just highlighting some areas where these are very common types of templates I see when I coach reps out here. And I just highlight some of the areas that always stick out to me as red flags. I'd like to connect, not assumptive, so I can better understand your role. Would you be open to a brief conversation? Sounds optional, not assumptive. If you're interested, I would love to set up some time. I really hate that line. No one wants to teach you more about your initiatives. Like you're supposed to know about their initiatives, and no one wants a high level overview. That's what they get on every single sales call, and people hate it. So some common problems I see with a lot of emails are weak openings, very little on who you are and why you're important to them specifically. It doesn't sound personal to them at all. And the requests to meet are cookie cutter. It sounds like you can easily ignore your message. They could, and their life would be fine and nothing's going to happen. So how do we avoid this? This is a checklist that I put together that all of you can use take your email templates, scan them by this checklist, and by removing anything in the optional, any buzzwords, buzz phrases, or optional sounding language and replacing them with assumptive language, you will instantly improve your email template and increase your response rates and your set rates. So a lot of the optional language, we've seen a lot of examples already. I was hoping to, I'd love to, if you're interested, act as a resource. Do you possibly have time? Cut that out. Other buzz phrases, give a high level overview, better understand your role, learn more about blank. No one wants an educational resource. Cheesy hook lines, we're getting into subject lines now. This is one I saw where I was like, oh my God. One, it's way too long. Two, not since the introduction of the assembly line has manufacturing been subject to such profound change. Like, oh my God, how could you sound more markety? So here are some assumptive replacements. I am looking to set some time this week too. Let's set some time this week too. Either way, I'm looking to. Let me know if either of those times work. looking forward to getting connected. All of these are assumptive. It sounds like the meeting is implied. You're expecting this to happen. And you don't have to change anything about your email template. Just by replacing this optional language with assumptive language, you will see within the first 1 to 2 weeks, you will start getting a lot more responses and likely a lot more meetings. So before I get into the actual email templates that I've put together as examples today, just the reason why, just picture this for a second. I've prospected into a lot of people in finance departments in my career. So when I send out these emails, here's probably a typical situation that this person is as they're receiving it. They're probably working on like ripping through some financial statement, some spreadsheet. They're trying to get it done for their CFO or their boss by noon or by the end of the day so that they can leave a little early, get home on time, take their kid to soccer practice. So they're very busy. They stop what they're doing. They hear the little ding in their email and they divert their attention to an unexpected email. Your email's filled with information, buzzwords about their 10K, broad industry trends, random statistics about how you can improve gross margins by 20% that don't mean anything to them personally. And on top of that, the language you're using sounds overly friendly and your request sounds optional. This makes it really easy for them to ignore the email and think that nothing bad is going to come of it. So the typical template I say reads like, it's like you're tossing out a fishing line and you're just waiting to see if they take the bait. The optional language leads them to conclude they don't have an obligation to even respond. So a litmus test, if you want to run your email templates by to make it more effective, is does my message sound assumptive and imply that a meeting will happen? Does this read like I personally sent it to them? And would I reply to this email if a sales rep at like one of these sales automation companies that literally sell to sales reps? I get these types of prospecting messages for people reaching out to sales departments. You probably do too. Think about if you got one of those and you basically replace their template with one of theirs, would you respond to that email? If it fails this test, you probably have more work to do. So here now I'm going to get into some actual examples. This is probably why you came to the video, but it's so important to understand the why. Like, yes, you could skip ahead to here, and maybe some of you did. I would urge you to go back and listen to the last 10 minutes or so. I don't know how long I've been going. But you beyond just being able to take this and replace it and use it for your own company and what you sell, which, yeah, that's probably going to get you some better results. It's understanding the why behind it. So I have a few examples here. First is from the perspective, if I was emailing an executive, you'll see this, who I am, why I'm reaching out to them, and then what I want framework. It's 3 bodies of language in every email, and the structure is the exact same. And I'm just changing a few keywords that I've put in parentheses based on who I'm reaching out to. This is how you can be targeted at scale. So you don't have to start from scratch every time. You can take a template, set it. And this one I'll show you in a second. It's targeted for finance people. Make a list of all the people in finance with this specific title. Vice President of Financial Planning and Analysis is this example. Make all of those lists. You can make one template and then it will be relevant to all of those people. So let's start with the executive one. My name's Connor and I'm part of the XYZ team responsible for supporting ABC Company regarding back office applications. Given your role, I'm looking to introduce our team and get aligned with your priorities going forward. My team specifically supports financial services organizations on priorities related to modernizing and consolidating application architectures and increasing process efficiencies through automation. We usually work with customers to improve reporting capabilities, take advantage of drill through capabilities, and enhance overall usability. Do you have availability next week on Wednesday or Thursday? Please let me know when works best and I will send us an invite to connect. Thanks in advance, Connor. So a couple things. It's concise. The who I am is only 2 sentences. The why I'm reaching out is only 2 sentences. And then the final what I want is only 2 sentences. You can make this even shorter. I'll tell you why I personally don't in a second, but I think it's okay to make it shorter. Also notice I did ask them. You might be, Connor, you said state, don't ask. I did ask what day they're available, but I still stated that I'm looking to introduce our team. Like the message of the email is assumptive, like this is implied. And I took priorities that are going to be relevant to almost any executive regarding back office applications. So if I was to send this to the CFO or the CTO or the CIO at one company in a financial services industry, this will likely be a good template for a different company. And all I have to do is change their name and the name of the company that I'm prospecting into. That's it. The rest can stay the same. This is how you move fast at high quality. Let's do VP of FP&A now. So you're going to see with each template, I have 2 more after this, how you can make it more targeted at scale and increase the probability of a response and therefore a meeting booked. In each one, I change a little bit of the tactics too. Like you'll see here, I listed times, like little things like that you can test out on your own. It's really the structure of who you are, why you're calling, and stating what you want. Whoops. So good morning, their name. I'm reaching out as your point of contact on the XYZ financial applications team responsible for supporting ABZ organization. Given your role, I'm looking to introduce our team and get aligned with your priorities going forward. My team primarily works with organizations on priorities related to strategic planning, budget forecasting, and financial reporting. We usually work with customers on automating account recs and much of the close process, predictive planning capabilities, and scenario modeling. Do any of the following dates work for an introductory discussion? Blank, blank, and blank. Thanks in advance, Connor. So similar structure. I changed around some of the techniques a little bit, but again, pretty much any VP of FP&A, this is going to be a relevant email for them. These are priorities. And again, you just set this right once. You put in the work, don't cheap out on the messaging, but pretty much any VP of FP&A is going to be interested in strategic planning, budget forecasting, and financial reporting. So the structure of this why, again, is what priorities and challenges do we work on? These are the 3 that I named, and how we solve them. This is how we usually do it, automating account recs and much of the close process. If I'm a VP of FP&A scanning this, I'm like, okay, they're on the financial applications team. These are all relevant to me. Yes. Okay, we do spend a lot of time on account recs in our close process. It's all subconscious, but basically in that 10 seconds they scan the email, they're like, this person sounds like they might be relevant to me. They're direct and to the point. They also made it easy and offered some options. Let me pull up my calendar. It's not going to work every time, but again, we're not going for every time here. We're going from increasing response to from 10% to 12%. Little improvements. This is what we're trying to do here. So now I'm going to show industry specific. So we're going to use that same title, VP of FP&A and Finance, and then in a couple different industries. And you can see how I kept the message largely the same and just replaced it with keywords that make it more targeted for finance in life sciences. So this example, my name is Connor and I'm part of the XYZ financial applications team responsible for supporting ABC company. Given your role, I'm looking to introduce our team and get aligned with your priorities going forward. My team specifically works with life science organizations on priorities related to, and here's the parentheses, clinical trial planning, budget forecasting, and commercialization. We typically work with customers to unify data from clinical trials and enhance portfolio planning through the use of AI and machine learning. Do you have availability next week? Please let me know what time works best for you, and I will send us an invite to connect. Thanks in advance, Connor. So you can see, and I should have put parentheses here too, set it once, do it right. This will be relevant to pretty much any VP of FP&A and life science. They're all thinking about clinical trial planning. That's literally their business model. Budget forecasting and commercialization. That's unique to life science because they're often coming out with these phase 3 drug trials that get approved and they go from doing $0 in revenue to they could be doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and they got to think about how to scale that. So what problems and priorities do we work on? How do we solve them? Again, who I am, why I'm calling, what I want. Let's do manufacturing now. And here's an example where I shorten the beginning a little bit. You can test and tweak all of these. My name is Connor, and I'm part of the XYZ financial applications team responsible for supporting ABC company. My team specifically works with manufacturing organizations on priorities related to supply chain planning, production cost management, and strategic sourcing. We work with customers to integrate financial data with supply chain management and automate routine financial processes such as invoicing and reconciliations through the use of AI and machine learning. Given your role, I'm looking to set some time to introduce my team and get aligned with your priorities going forward. Do either of the following dates work for you? Looking forward to it, Connor. Again, here's that I'm looking to set some time, not if you're free or if you're interested, worth a chat. I know a lot of people like those interest-based call to actions. Use what works. If it works for you, use it. I've personally found, and I know there's like Gong data that says otherwise, that's the most effective interest-based call to action, like worth a chat. I have never had success with those. I've had much more success and seen people I've coached have much more success when really being strong and assumptive, expecting and implying this meeting is going to happen, that's what gets people to respond more frequently and therefore book meetings. So here are some plugins to those parentheses I was just showing you. This is how I do it. So again, this is what I mean when I say do it once, do it right, set the right templates so that, and I just did one title. Now you want to do this for pretty much every relevant persona. Start with the most relevant and the most common first. You basically need to answer three things. What priorities and challenges does this person care about or this persona care about? What pain points do they typically face related to those challenges or priorities? And then how does your company help them? So for VPs of FP&A, they're all typically focused on strategic planning, budget allocation, scenario modeling. There's a lot more. Those are just three I picked. What pain points do they have with these? They have excessive manual processes. They have limited ability for drill through capabilities. They have a lack of real-time data. And then how does this company solve that challenge? We automate routine financial processes, we unify data sources, and we deliver data-driven budget justifications. Notice how a lot of this, no matter where you work, probably sounds pretty similar. And it's true. Most software companies, most SaaS companies, people in tech or B2B sales, it involves for various industries, very different sized companies, essentially helping companies and specific personas be more efficient. So it's often the same things: eliminating manual process, giving them more access to real-time data. It often sounds the same. So here's a ChatGPT shortcut too. I don't recommend just using ChatGPT. That's why step 4 I'll talk about in a sec. So basically prompt 1, type in, what are the top 5 priorities of XYZ title? What are the top 5 priorities of an IT director? What are the top 5 pain points related to these priorities? Prompt 3, how does your company, XYZ company, solve these pain points? This will give you probably a 70 to 80% starting point. And then what you should really do is tighten up the results using language from your company's website, and then make it read like a human. So this is something a lot of companies are actually really good at. I give them a lot of credit for, because I've seen so many different company websites. They do a really good job of explaining the value of their solution, who it helps, the pain points and challenges it solves. You could honestly probably skip ChatGPT and just go to the website and do it, but this gives you a good starting point. And then make it read like a human, because on your website, it's going to be much more marketing language. And this is where people get in trouble on their emails, is when they just copy paste that stuff. It's more meant to be a guide, and then make it more human. So now we're going to get into follow-ups. And this is, I mentioned earlier how those email templates are maybe a little longer than you were expecting, although they're still shorter than a lot of templates I see out there. But the reason why I think that's okay is because most people, no matter how good your initial email is, are not going to respond to your first email. They're going to glance at it. They're going to take a look. They'll probably be able to figure out you're just another sales rep or SDR reaching out to them. And in their head, they're like, if I ignore this, is it okay? Like, this is what they do all the time. So the importance of follow-ups, I've booked probably over email, 70% of my meetings booked over my career from both any method, cold calling and emailing, have come from follow-ups. So the goal of a follow-up, in my opinion, is to snap them out of their daily routine and induce a response. I prefer short and brief follow-ups that essentially just tell them to go read the message down below, the initial email that you sent. Don't wind up and send them another long email. This is a big mistake I see out there, and how reps are trained is they send some first email, maybe it's similar to the one I showed, and then the second email is like, hey, not sure if you saw the note, but wanted to pass along this article and these statistics. And it's almost like a whole brand new email in itself. And what I think that does, whether it's subconscious or not, is it dilutes the value of your first message. It's basically telling the prospect, okay, you didn't like that one and you didn't respond. That's okay, you didn't respond to me. Like, here's this one. How about this one? You interested in this PDF that I tagged or this article that I linked to? It dilutes the value of your first message. So I say do the first message right, and then your follow-ups should basically read, the tone should be like, come on, just respond. I'm a real person actually reaching out to you, trying to get in contact with you. Please just give me a response, whether it's yes or no. That's not what you actually say, but I'll show you examples in a second. So why this works, you are essentially telling them, and I kind of just said it, you're telling them to read your initial message because it's important. Too many follow-ups I read sound way too forgiving of the fact that they have essentially been ignoring you. It makes your request again sound optional, so they don't feel obligated to respond. The majority of your booked meetings will come from follow-up emails if done properly. And I'll show you examples in a second. The single line that's booked me more meetings than any other email as an SDR, BDR, all the training I've gotten on cold calling, emailing, the single line is, please give me your thoughts on this. No signature, nothing. It just says, please give me your thoughts on this. Because what this does is the prospect sees that in their inbox and they're like, wait, what? And then they scroll down and they see, oh, I've missed another follow-up from the, like, what is this person? What did they say to me? And then they go and they read your first email very carefully and slowly. And that's why I think it's okay for the initial email to be longer, as long as you're okay and expecting that that's not going to book the meeting. It's going to be the follow-up that shocks them, gets them to go read the first message. And now you've built it. Now you've been able to say a lot more and they're going to read it slowly and carefully. So now I'll get into some of the follow-up sequences I like, and you'll see they're all of this. Come on, first message, give me your thoughts on this. So the first one, another thing with the follow-ups is they should be every other day, in my opinion, no longer. So if you send an initial email on Monday, follow-up 1 should come on Wednesday, follow-up 2 should come on Friday, follow-up 3 should come on the following Monday or Tuesday at the latest. The other thing, send them first thing in the morning, in my opinion. I've found that they're less effective the longer in the day that you wait to send them. It should be like from 8. That's why I like emailing from 8 a.m. to 9:30, because you're signaling basically the first thing you did when you woke up was follow up with them, that you're high on their priority list, Follow-up 1, there's a couple options I like. Just following up on my previous message. Are you available on either of those dates? Let me know when would work best. Thanks in advance, blank. Or, hi, blank, did you get a chance to review my note below? I kind of like this one better. Looking forward to speaking, blank. But again, short, sweet, to the point. I'd say 20% of my meetings booked come from this one, but still at this point, most people have not responded. I've sent one email and the majority of responses I get have still not happened by this one. This is the one that gets the most responses. Follow up 2. Please give me your thoughts on this. You can add thanks if you want. You can be a little more polite if you want, but this is what they're going to see in their inbox. They're just going to see, please give me your thoughts on this. They're going to scroll down. Did you get a chance to review my note below? And they're like, wait, what is this note? And then they go read your first email really carefully. Here's a little warning though. You have to be mentally okay. This elicits a lot of responses, which again is what we want. You can't book the meeting unless you get the response. But a lot of those responses can be pretty harsh to this because you're being pretty pushy and pretty aggressive when you just say, please give me your thoughts on this. So a lot of people are like, yeah, my thoughts are never contact me again. Thanks, buddy. Take me off your list. You have to be able to mentally laugh at that because again, it's just a statistic. It was a response. It was a probability of booking the meeting. A lot of them are apologetic. They're like, hey, so sorry, didn't see your first messages. Yes, I'm free on that date you proposed, Tuesday, in which case book the meeting. The third and the most common one is they give you some form of objection like, hey, sorry, we already use X solution for this. I don't think it makes sense for us to meet. That's why I like the more aggressive because most of the time they just wouldn't have responded had your follow-ups not been direct and to the point and kind of shocked them and woken them up out of their day. Now you at least have a chance to respond to that and tell them why it makes sense to meet anyway. And you should have prepared responses on how to handle that. That's what I'm going to talk about in the objection handling bank in a second. And then here's a follow-up 3 that I like. It's sort of a breakup one, but usually most of the responses come from this one. This is a hi blank. Let me know if this is a conversation we should postpone for a later date, perhaps early December. Let me know. Again, I like this one. It's breakup, but you're still like assuming this meeting's going to happen. And then if you want to give yourself another shot on that, one I've tried that has some success at this point is you just say their first name. Again, it's sort of a pattern interrupt. Like if their name was John, just say John. And some people respond. And it's just a slight improvement or slight chance, additional chance that it could lead to the meeting. But this should be every other day so that in the span of 7 to 8 days, they've gotten either 3 or 4 emails from you. They know you're there at that point. So now let's get to the A/B cadence in putting this all together. And this is what starts to gamify the job in how you can wake up knowing what to do rather than coming up coming up with what to do that day and sort of put the job on autopilot. So I used an example in those templates of a vice president of FP&A, financial planning and analysis. That's just one persona. You could, if you prospect into finance people, there's FP&A, there's financial analysts, there's controllers, there's accountants, there's lots of different personas and titles that could be relevant to you. So what you want to start doing is creating lists of all of those different personas and breaking up your territory into what I call homogeneous lists, like lists with homogeneous or similar characteristics. So some ways to do this, and where most people start, is make different lists by account, like whether it's a parent account or a subsidiary, and all the relevant personas at that account that you could prospect into, you kind of add to a list. I think that's a good starting point, but I actually like to do it by either title or department better, because you can move. This is how you can create one template and move fast at a high quality. So doing it by FP&A, financial analysts, accountants, controllers, making different lists and taking that who, why, what value statement framework for emails and just replacing some of the priorities and challenges with ones that make it more relevant for each persona and how you solve them. This is how you can move targeted at scale. And ideally, you can combine these and also do it by industry. So I showed you a couple examples: VPs of FP&A or people in finance in the life science industry, or people in finance in the manufacturing industry. Because most people, or a lot of you that I've coached out there, you don't focus on just one industry. You have maybe a geographic patch in all of the industries. So this is how you can coil the spring, set the foundation, get those lists in place that are homogeneous, start putting together templates that are targeted towards those lists, and move fast at a high quality. So the templates are pre-built, slightly modified to be more targeted. You save your responses to the common objections too, which I'll talk about in a second, and you have those follow-ups ready to go. I just gave you some examples. So then you get to the AB cadence, and this is what can almost gamify the SDR job for a lot of people. This is the process that allows you to be targeted at scale. This is more effective for mass outreach. So I'm not talking about your A accounts here. Set those aside, the ones you want to be more strategic with. This is for the rest, that open sea of accounts that you otherwise wouldn't even have time to get to. This is how you can target all of them more than once throughout the course of a quarter or a fiscal year. So here's an example of how this would go. You would email a group of people. It could be a combination of lists. This is where people get a little confused sometimes when I talk about this. It doesn't have to literally be one list on Monday. It could be people in finance and life science and people in finance and manufacturing. Each list is about 50 people, and in an hour and a half, you get to all of them. So it's like 100 emails, and that's your group A. So you email group A, you do the same thing for a different group of people on Tuesday. Wednesday morning, the first thing you're going to do is take that first follow-up I gave you, whatever option you like better, copy, paste, and go down the list. You literally go into your sent box in your Outlook or Gmail, scroll down to the first email you sent Monday, and then copy, paste. There's a way to do this manual or automate this, I'm sure. I always like to do it manually because sometimes there's little things I notice or little ways I can add additional value, and it doesn't take that long. But Wednesday morning, that's the first thing I do, follow up one to group A. Thursday morning, same thing, same follow up. Scroll down to Tuesday in your sent box, the first email you sent, boom, 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 till you've hit every person. Then Friday, this is follow-up 2. This is just, please give me your thoughts on this period, is the example I gave. The beauty of that is you don't need to change anything. You don't need to change their name or their company or anything like that. So again, it's literally copy, paste, please give me your thoughts on this. To now you would scroll down to Wednesday, the first email you sent, and then go till Thursday so that you send follow-up 2 to everyone on group A and group B. Then Monday, send follow-up 3, do the same thing. Wednesday, if you want to do 4, group A and group B on Wednesday. I wouldn't go more than 4. A lot of people think, I hear things like 15 touch points, 20 touch points. In my opinion, if you've sent 3 or 4 emails and mixed in some calls within a 7 or 8 day span, they know you're there. And if they haven't responded to you, you're better off just moving on to a new list and starting the AB cadence all over again. So when you're starting out and just putting this into practice, don't worry about the big numbers yet. Start slow. Maybe start with a group of 10 people on Monday and then 10 people on Tuesday. follow up with those 10 people on Wednesday, follow up with group B on Thursday, and just get used to doing the motions. And then maybe the next week, if it feels comfortable, move to 25 people and move to 40, 50. Once you can get towards that 100 number on a daily basis, that's when the results really start to compound. And like, you'd think going from 50 emails to 100 emails a day would 2x your results. It's not like that. It starts to scale exponentially and really like 4 or 5x's your results. But this is so that you have something to do when you wake up. This is how I started my day every day. I was not a big cold caller in the morning. I usually did this for the first hour and a half of the day. Then I did cold calls late in the morning. Then in the early afternoon, I planned what lists I was going to target and then made more cold calls again at the end of the day. So if you want to visualize this, I've showed this for cold calling and the value statement framework, but the same thing applies to email. You send the email and you follow up, but you can't. Here's the difference between cold calling and emailing. If with cold calling, you're guaranteed to get one of these 3 outcomes. If you cold call someone and you deliver a value statement, they'll either agree to the meeting, you'll get a no, take me off your list and hang up, or you'll get some form of engaged response. Over email, the only difference is that they could also just not respond to you. So that's why responses are so important, because it kicks off one of these 3 outcomes. And either it's the same thing. Either if they respond to your email, there's only 3 possible outcomes really. They agree to the meeting and you send an invite with a strong agenda and you book it ideally quickly. You get a resounding no, in which case you could make an attempt. But if it's like a take me off your list, honestly, those sometimes aren't even worth it. It's better to just leave them alone. And maybe you could circle back with them in like 4 to 6 weeks. Or you get some form of an objection. We are already an XX customer. I'm not the right person. We don't own any blank at all. For those of you who know me, this is where I work, but we don't own any blank. Because some people, when you reach out, they think you're reaching out because they're a customer, but you just want to set a meeting with them. It's okay. So we don't own your product or service. That's a common one. No bandwidth, circle back in a few months, insert common objection. The key to objection handling on email, in my opinion, from my experience, it's very similar to how you handle cold call objections, or how I prefer to, which is at first, acknowledge whatever the concern is and tell them it makes sense to meet anyway, and then request a time to meet. So here's an example. Wouldn't make sense for us to meet. We're already an XYZ customer. Hi, blank. Thank you for the insight. The idea is just for us to get introduced and be a resource and point of contact here at ABC. We work with a lot of XYZ customers, so if there's ever a fit, we can move forward, but it would at least make sense, or it would make sense to at least get aligned for the year. A brief 15-minute call would be greatly appreciated. Do either of these days work for you? Thanks in advance, Connor. Now, I mentioned the objection handling email bank earlier. What you'll start to notice is that a lot of these objections over email are pretty similar. You can kind of bucket them into the same categories. So what I say is try and set a template. In this case, it would be we're already an XYZ customer, or we already use X solution. That way, every time you get a similar objection, you can go to whether you keep it in OneNote or a Microsoft Word document, you go to it, you pull it out as a starting point, and then maybe you can tweak it and make it more targeted based on where this specific persona works. But it's just a way to be a lot more efficient so that you're not starting from scratch every single time. And finally here, we'll wrap up with subject lines. This is a question I get a lot. I think a lot of people overthink it. I showed an example earlier about the manufacturing one, and it was just super cheesy. That's the type of stuff to avoid. So when it comes to subject lines, just like the email, less is more. Avoid cheesy, gimmicky marketing type subject lines. Avoid gimmicky questions like looking to improve marketing efficiencies, or read this if you don't want to miss another $1 of revenue. What I say is less is more, ideally 4 words or less. This is the one I recommend. The goal is just not to screw up your email. So in my case, if I was prospecting into someone named James, this is the one I use most often. Connor/James introduction, or it can be your company name - their company name introduction. 4 words, simple. It's not, maybe there is a better subject line out there. I just know this one works at scale. It's not going to decrease your results. If anything, it definitely improves it from a lot of this stuff. Another example, if you know what specific process is most important to this person, say it was payroll, you could do Connor/James. Payroll efficiency. The only sort of gimmicky one I've been okay with that I've seen work and have like adequate results is meeting next week. But I would still just recommend, honestly, using one of these first two because I know they work. So thank you. If this was helpful and you want more hands-on guidance to set the right foundation and actually implement these email templates in AB Cadence for your specific role and company, check out the link to the pinned comment below. I'm the lead instructor in the SDR Accelerator community, or you can book a call with me as well. That link is in the description. Hope this helped. If it did, hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.